Christmas Eve Horror Stories. Story number 1. It was Christmas Eve, and the small town of Millville was bustling with holiday cheer. Children were running around, excitedly waiting for Santa to arrive, and adults were rushing to finish their last-minute shopping. As the night went on, a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping the town in a thick, eerie mist. Despite the weather, people continued to go about their business, but there was a sense of unease that lingered in the air. As the clock struck midnight, a group of teenagers decided to venture out into the fog in search of a Christmas tree to chop down for their annual holiday party. They had heard about a particular tree in the forest, one that was said to be particularly tall and beautiful. The teens set off into the forest, their flashlights barely able to pierce through the thick fog. As they searched, they suddenly heard a faint singing in the distance. It was a soft, sweet voice singing a Christmas carol. Thinking it was just someone out enjoying the holiday, the teens followed the sound deeper into the forest. But as they got closer, the singing became more and more eerie, until it was a twisted, demonic tune. The group realized they were not alone in the forest, and they turned to run. But as they tried to find their way back, they realized they were lost, the fog too thick to see through. Panicked and lost, the teens stumbled upon a clearing where they saw a tall, dark figure standing in front of a glowing Christmas tree. It was Santa Claus, or at least it appeared to be. But as they got closer, they saw that the figure was covered in blood and had a twisted, demonic expression on its face. The teens realized with horror that this was not the jolly old man they knew and loved, but a twisted, evil version. They turned and ran, finally finding their way out of the forest and back to the safety of their town. They never spoke of their terrifying encounter, but the story of the evil Santa Claus in the Millville forest became a legend, whispered among the townspeople on Christmas Eve. And every year, as the fog rolls in and the singing fills the air, the people of Millville lock their doors and pray that the evil Santa will never find them. Story number 2. It was Christmas Eve, and I was feeling particularly festive. I had spent the day baking cookies and wrapping gifts, and now I was snuggled up by the fireplace with a mug of hot cocoa. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my friend, Jane. "Hey, are you busy tonight?" she asked. "No, not really," I replied. "Why do you ask?" "Well, I know this might sound crazy, but I really want to go see the Christmas lights at the old abandoned mansion on the edge of town," she said. "I've heard rumors that it's haunted, but I think it would be really cool to check it out." I hesitated for a moment, not sure if I really wanted to go. But then I thought, what's the harm in a little ghost hunting on Christmas Eve? So I agreed, and we made plans to meet up in an hour. As I drove to the mansion, the snow-covered trees and twinkling lights of the Christmas decorations made me feel all warm and cozy. But as we approached the mansion, my nerves started to get the better of me. The place was eerily quiet, and the only light came from the flickering glow of the Christmas lights strung up around the exterior. We made our way up the front steps, and as I reached for the door, I noticed that it was slightly ajar. I hesitated for a moment, but Jane pushed it open and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and musty, and I could hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the distance. We followed the footsteps down a long hallway, and as we turned a corner, we found ourselves in a room with a giant Christmas tree. The tree was covered in sparkling ornaments, but as I looked closer, I realized that they were all human eyeballs. I gasped and backed away, but Jane just chuckled and said, "Come on, let's keep exploring." We continued down the hallway, and as we passed a door, I heard a faint voice whisper my name. I froze in place, but Jane just laughed and said, "It's probably just the wind." But as we approached the next room, I knew it wasn't the wind. There was a figure standing in the corner, draped in a dark cloak. I could see the glowing red eyes peering out from under the hood, and as I tried to run, I felt a cold hand grab my arm. I screamed and struggled to break free, but the figure just laughed and said, "You're not going anywhere, dear. You're going to be my Christmas present this year." As I was dragged deeper into the mansion, I knew I was doomed. I would be the next victim in this haunted house's twisted holiday tradition. And as the figure started to unwrap me, I knew that this would be the last Christmas I would ever see. Story number 3. It was Christmas Eve, and the small town of Millfield was blanketed in a layer of fresh snow. The streets were quiet and peaceful, with only the occasional car driving by. The festive lights and decorations added a warm glow to the cold winter night. As the clock struck midnight, a group of teenagers decided to embark on a tradition that had been passed down for generations in their town. They would venture into the forest, known locally as the Haunted Woods, and perform a ritual to summon the spirit of a long-dead man named Jacob Marley. The legend said that Marley had been a miserly old man who had wronged many people in life and was now doomed to wander the earth as a ghost, weighed down by chains and shackles. The teenagers believed that by performing the ritual, they could communicate with Marley and ask for his forgiveness in the hopes that he would be freed from his curse. As they entered the woods, the group began to feel uneasy. The temperature seemed to drop and the trees seemed to grow taller and more twisted. Despite their reservations, they pressed on, following the instructions of the ritual. As they reached the clearing where Marley was said to appear, they began to hear strange noises and feel a sense of dread wash over them. Suddenly, Marley appeared before them, a ghostly figure with chains wrapped around his body. The teenagers froze in fear, unable to move or speak. Marley spoke in a low, raspy voice, telling them of the horrors he had faced in life and the eternal torment he now suffered. He begged the teenagers to leave and never return, warning them that they were playing with forces they couldn't understand. Terrified, the teenagers turned and fled from the woods, never looking back. As they emerged from the forest, the air felt warmer and the trees seemed to shrink back to their normal size. As they made their way back to town, the teenagers knew that they had experienced something truly terrifying. They vowed to never return to the Haunted Woods again, and to never speak of their encounter with Jacob Marley. To this day, the legend of Marley and the Haunted Woods remains a terrifying reminder of the dangers of messing with the unknown on Christmas Eve. Story number 4. It was the week before Christmas, and all through the town, people were bustling about, preparing for the holiday. But for one family, their holiday cheer was about to turn into a nightmare. The Smith family had always loved Christmas, and they went all out every year with decorations, gifts, and a big holiday feast. This year was no different, except for one strange occurrence. Every night, Mrs. Smith would wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside her bedroom. She assumed it was her husband or one of her children, but every time she got up to investigate, the footsteps had stopped and there was no one there. One night, Mrs. Smith decided to set up a camera to try and catch the mysterious footsteps on film. The next morning, she woke up to find footage of a shadowy figure pacing back and forth in the hallway. The family was terrified and decided to call in a spiritual medium to try and figure out what was going on. The medium revealed that their home was haunted by the ghost of a former resident who had died on Christmas Eve many years before. The ghost was angry and upset that the family was enjoying the holiday that he had never been able to experience. The medium advised the family to leave the ghost be and not to provoke it any further. The family took the medium's advice and left the ghost alone. But they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. On Christmas Eve, they gathered around the fireplace to exchange gifts and celebrate the holiday. Suddenly, the room grew cold and the Christmas tree started shaking. Ornaments fell off the branches and the family could hear the ghost's footsteps approaching from the hallway. The family huddled together in fear as the ghost appeared in the room, its angry face contorted with rage. But then, something strange happened. The ghost's expression softened, and it seemed to understand that the family was not there to harm it. The ghost vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the family shaken but grateful to be alive. From that day on, they made sure to always include the ghost in their holiday celebration, knowing that even the dead deserve a little holiday cheer.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to stay tuned for more true stories.